So have you ever wondered how it is that some people can just pick up a song and play it after hearing it for the first time? I used to wonder the same thing too. In today's video, we're gonna cover possibly the most important and practical thing you could ever learn as a musician. Music with Mike. Hey everyone, Mike Hilbun here, and welcome back to another video. Today is part 3 in my music theory video series. Now in our first video, we looked at scales. We talked about the major scale, we talked about how to create one. In part 2, we talked about chords. We talked about major chords, minor chords, even diminished and augmented, and again, we talked about how to make them. Today in part 3, we're going to talk about the relationship between chords and scales. I hope you don't mind 4-syllable words, because today we're going to talk about diatonic chords. So what does diatonic mean? Diatonic is just a big fancy word that means in the key of. So if we talk about the diatonic chords, what that means is we're talking about the chords in the key of whatever key we're in. In part 2, we talked about how our triads are built in thirds. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create chords using only the notes in a major scale. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so let's figure out all the chords that are in the key of C major. Remember that triads are built by stacking thirds above a root note. So for our diatonic chords, we're gonna use only the notes in the key of C major. Let's see what kind of chord we can build off the first note in the scale. Starting from C, if we go up a third in the scale, the note we get to is E, which ends up being a major third above C. From E, if we go up another third in the scale, we get to the note G, which ends up being a minor third above E. Those intervals together make up a major chord. So the first chord in the key of C major is, you guessed it, C major. Let's do another one, this time starting on the second note in the scale, D. If we go up a third in the scale, the note we get to is F. This is a minor third above D. From F, going up another diatonic third gets us to the note A, which is a major third above F. These intervals make up a minor chord. So the second chord in the key of C is D minor. You know, you guys are smart, so you're probably starting to notice a pattern here. We're essentially just skipping notes in the scale. That's why we're using the piano and the key of C, because since it's all the white keys on the piano, it's super easy to visualize the shape that we're kind of moving through the scale. As opposed to the guitar, we have a completely different grip for each chord, and it's much harder to see what the notes are. So anyways, let's jump right back in and start looking at the chord that starts on the third scale degree, E. It's made of the notes E, G, and B. This is another minor chord. Now that you're starting to understand the process of what we're doing, I'm going to speed things up and show you what the rest of the diatonic chords are. The fourth chord is made of the notes F, A, and C, which is an F major chord. The fifth chord is made of the notes G, B, and D, G major. The sixth chord is A minor, A, C, and E. The seventh chord in the key is a little interesting. B, D, and F make up a B diminished chord. You don't hear this one too often, but it's good to know that it's there. And finally, we're back to C. Okay, so I know I really rushed through the last couple chords there. Mostly for time's sake, and also I don't know if it'd really be the most interesting video if I just sat there and at a piano and did all the scratch work. However, using the knowledge that we talked about in part 1 on scales and part 2 on chords, I encourage you to maybe connect the dots for yourself to really get all these things in your head and understand what we're talking about. So anyways, that just about does it for the key of C major. Now, I know what you're thinking. Mike,
that's just one key. There's 11 other keys. Do I really have to go through all this work for every single key?
And to that I would say, no, you don't. There's a shortcut for this. That shortcut is going to bring us all the way back to our first discussion on major scales. The reason we looked at them with an almost formulaic way of thinking was because the distances between every single note is the same, regardless of what key you're in. The distance between the first and second note of any major scale is going to be the same. The distance between the first and the third note of any major scale is going to be the same. The first and fifth note, the second and fourth note, third and seventh note, it doesn't matter. They're all going to have the same distance from each other. Again, regardless of what key you're in. So by that same logic, we know that a chord built on the first scale degree of any major scale is going to be a major chord. On the second scale degree, it's going to be a minor chord. The third will be another minor, the fourth will be major, the fifth will be major, the sixth will be minor, the seventh will be diminished. So as an example of what I'm talking about, let's look at the chords in the key of G, for instance. The chords in the key of G are going to be G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, and F sharp diminished. Now the reason I can rattle that off so quickly is because experience. I've played in the key of G hundreds if not thousands of times. However, I encourage you to use the information that we've discussed and maybe try to do some of the scratch work and see if you come to the same conclusions that we did to make sure you fully understand what we've talked about. But anyways, all that's wonderful, and I delivered some pretty big promises in the intro about this being the most important thing you'll ever learn as a musician. So what do we do with this information? Where's the application? So these diatonic chords are the basis for what's known as the number system. And in this system, you would use numbers to reference chords within a key. For example, if you're playing a song in the key of C major and you see a 1, that would mean you'd play a C major chord. If you see a 2, it would mean D minor. Likewise, if you're in the key of G, if you see a 1, it would mean G major, 2 would be A minor, so on and so forth. But that brings up another question. If you want to play a G major chord, why write down the number 1? Why not just write down G major? The most obvious example is ease of transposition. If you learn a song as numbers, then you're more easily able to visualize, know, or whatever the song in multiple keys all at the same time. Think of it like a mental capo, if you will. Same shapes, different key. So then why not just use a capo all the time? Well, I'm sure you know that as a guitar player, sometimes there's situations where you aren't just playing open chords and a capo won't really help you. Maybe you're playing bar chords, maybe you're taking a lead, maybe you've learned a specific part for a specific song. But even if you are just strumming chords in open position, you're not always moving the capo up. What if you have to transpose the song down? I don't know, maybe the singer has a cold or something. At some point, you're gonna have to rethink what you're doing. Anyways, knowing the number system is obviously great in the event you have to transpose. To me though, the real beauty behind learning songs using this number system is that it's allowed me to easily find and identify patterns or trends in songs within similar genres. And after years of looking at music in this way, when I'm sitting in on a gig and maybe playing a song I've never heard before, I usually have an idea of where the song's gonna go next, especially if it's in a genre that I have some experience with. And that has immensely sped up how quickly I can pick up and learn songs on the fly. The most simple example of this would be seeing how two progressions are the exact same, even if they're using totally different chords. Now, the more complicated the music gets, the more this system/way of thinking really shines through. So maybe try to work out the number version of all the songs you know and see how many have the exact same or even similar progressions to each other. Well, that just about does it for diatonic chords. As you can see, it not only unlocks the ability to easily transpose songs on the fly, but to learn songs on the fly. You can communicate chord progressions to other musicians simply by holding up some numbers at them, and you can also write songs literally by rolling a dice. I mean, I don't know if that'll sound great, but I'm sure it'll be fun to see what kind of stuff you come up with. And this is just the beginning too. As I said earlier, the number system is just based on all these diatonic chords we've talked about. So we've barely touched on the possibilities that this system holds. That actually might be a kind of good thing to cover in another video. Well, if you guys want to see that video, just let me know down in the comments. For now, if you haven't seen any of the previous videos in this series, you can watch them here, and make sure to stay tuned for more episodes coming up soon in the future. Hey everybody, thanks again for watching today's video. It was part 3 of my music theory video series. As always, if you have a question about something I covered in today's video, or you just have something you want to say, please leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing to my channel for upcoming music and guitar related content. I'm Mike Hilbun. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.